Welcome back to our passage. The time has come. The time has come for the promise to become reality. Our hero, all this build up, all this preparation, all this ground laying, all the prophetic declarations that John is going to come, suddenly the promise is going to become reality. Have you ever been in that place where something you've waited for years, something you've believed in, maybe something you've prayed for years, you've prepared for years, suddenly becomes reality? And all those years of waiting, suddenly it's here. I remember as an 18-year-old getting a sense of God speaking very clearly to me and calling me to serve Him. But I spent the next 14 years of my life preparing for that, and taking every opportunity I could to learn about the things of God and to experience different forms of ministry, to, in a sense, try and be prepared as I can. But I remember what I experienced the day when I stepped out of the secular workplace to become a minister. It was like I'd waited 14 years for something to start. And rather than arriving at my destination, I'd arrived at the beginning. And I wonder whether you've ever experienced something like that, that when you've waited for something for years, suddenly you arrive at that place and it's time for your promise to start. And there's a danger sometimes that we're always looking to the future and we forget to live in the present. We forget to take the time to enjoy the moment. When we're waiting for God's promises to come true, when we're waiting for something that we've prayed for to happen, it's important that we don't have what I would call a passive waiting, but actually we use that waiting as a time of preparation and equipping. And that's what we've seen in our story of John the Baptist. But the time has come. Our hero is born. And in Luke 1 verses 57 to 66, we have the account of John being born. And he's born in the natural, normal way. And all the people gather round, and they gather round Elizabeth to celebrate. These are probably the people who have pointed the finger at her for years, are suddenly joining in her joy. How things change very quickly. And it's a time of birth, and they come to his circumcision and his sort of ceremony, his naming ceremony. The people want to name him Zachariah after his dad, but Elizabeth takes this stand and says no. But they look to the father then, who's up to this point has been mute, and he's been using a tablet to write on, because he writes onto this tablet, his name is John. And at that moment he suddenly is able to speak again, and he starts praising God. And the impact of this birth is more than just a normal natural birth. There's an incredible awe that falls on all the neighbourhood, across the whole area that they live in, across the whole of the region. And they find the people find themselves wondering, what is this child going to be after such I suppose a miraculous set of events? There's a few things that we can learn from this passage. Our hero is born, and like any birth, it's a time for celebration. But for John's birth, it's a testimony to God's mercy, because there's a personal experience. Elizabeth is full of joy. She's given birth to a son. You know, in the culture of the day, there was no higher privilege for a woman, and this is something that she'd waited for all her life, believed was impossible. And suddenly God has made her impossible dreams reality. Can you imagine the change in Elizabeth to be able to have a son and hold her head up with pride in her community again? There's a personal experience. But there's also a shared experience, because the crowd who once pointed the finger, who once looked at Elizabeth and said, oh, she must have done something wrong that God's not blessed her with a son, suddenly the people who've criticised her all these years are the ones who are joining in that experience. There's a shared experience. But I want to suggest there's also a global experience, because God's salvation plan has started. John the Baptist is the forerunner to Jesus. John the Baptist's birth makes it possible for Jesus to come.